So Gina, how's the situation over there, like related to COVID? Is it as crazy as it's here? We are on a 21-day lockout.
We don't have a 21-day lockout yet, Mudit, but I hear you. My family is based in Calcutta, so
Oh,
definitely have all years. And yeah, I have family in Kerala as well and friends around, so
hmm.
very much following the news. But yes, we definitely have shelter in place and a couple of other, nationwide efforts underway.
Hmm.
Everyone's trying to balance and figure out what the new norm is. So yeah.
Hmm. So it's a new post-COVID-19 society. It won't gonna be. It's gonna be more virtual and everything, right?
Well, hopefully it would, hopefully all of this will come back to normalcy soon and they
Mhm.
find a cure or a vaccine. Yeah, fingers crossed. Hopefully and we're able to quarantine and kind of get rid of the virus in the first place.
All right, certainly. So I think we can start. I think. So, guys, thank you for taking the time out and joining us for the webinar today. Really great that you can join us today for the webinar on how you can perform end-to-end mobile testing using HeadSpin. Uh, to give you a brief about HeadSpin is a San Francisco-based company. They are a pioneer in mobile app testing space. They provide you real devices that is connected to real networks that can help you test your mobile application end to end. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. I will let Gina and Nathan, who are joining me today, to explain you more about what are the different capabilities of HeadSpin and how you can leverage it for your end-to-end testing. So to give you a brief introduction, Gina is a Google alumnus. She has around 13 years of experience working in Google. Last, she was working as a vice president in Google for strategic uh, partnerships. Similarly, Nathan, he is working for HPN for around 3 years now. He is working as customer success director customer success. He would be giving us a little bit of brief in detail in a technical way about how headspin is gonna help you out in your testing aspect. To give you an introduction about me, I'm Mudit Singh. I'm leading the product and growth side at Lambda Test. At the end of the presentation from Gina and Nathan, I would be giving a little bit of brief about Lambda Test as well, and how you can combine HeadSpin and Lambda Test both for your end-to-end web application and mobile application testing, like your complete digital presence. HeadSpin can help you in the mobile part, Lambda Test can help you in the web part, right? So it's also the agenda about today. So we will be diving a little bit into how manual and automated mobile application testing is performed in real devices, why mobile experience management kind of works, like why exactly is it a little bit of important in today's mobile age, and how exactly is the continuous monitoring of web application of mobile application looks like, right? So we will be also doing a Q&A session in the end. So you can see a Q&A panel, a questions panel in the uh, Zoom support. So anytime you have any question, either feel free to type it then and there, or we can type it, note it down and type it at the end of the session. We will be doing a 15 to 20 minutes of a dedicated Q&A session where me, Nathan, and Gina would be helping out you with your questions, right? So if you have any question in the time being, just note it down and we will help you out in the end. So I think that's it from my side, Gina. I think I will hand over the presentation to you. Uh,
Yeah. Um, yes, I'm ready to share screen.
Let me stop my share.
Okay, great. Can you see my screen, Mudit?
Yes, yes, we can.
Let me just go into here. Great. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Udit. And first and foremost, thank you very much, everybody who's on live stream as well as on the webinar right now for taking the time from your busy schedules this week to join us for this webinar. We have folks dialing in from around the world, and we are very grateful for your time. I hope every one of you is healthy and safe, and so are your family and friends wherever they are. And also, I want to take this opportunity to thank Lambda Test, especially Asad, Jay, Mudit, and Junaid, who have been providing us continued partnership as well as support, and also to host this webinar and providing a platform for us to jointly share our best practices and offerings with this audience. So to quickly introduce myself, I'm Gina James, and as Mudit mentioned, I head up developer platforms group at HeadSpin, focused on building deeper product connections and new business opportunities. Prior to joining HeadSpin, I worked at Google, where I led various businesses as well as product partnerships for about 13 and a half years in India and in the US across advertiser teams, publishers, and for the last 5.5 years, I've been invested in the app developer ecosystem on the Google Play and Android teams. I'm joined here by my colleague Nathan, who's our head of customer success engineering team. Nathan, if you want to actually share a few words by way of introduction, that would be great.
Oh, thank you so much, Gina, and thank you once again for everyone who's joined via the virtual bridge. My name is Nathan, and I lead customer success at HeadSpin, and we're really excited to talk about essentially how you can leverage HeadSpin to create a 5-star app experience and ultimately make your app performant. Thank you.
Great. I also, in the spirit of like webinar, I'm going to try and boldly turn on my video. I'm just going to try and figure out how to do that first of all, and take it from there. But if it doesn't work, which it doesn't right now, if I'm sharing my screen, just a second. Okay, great. Let's make this work. Yes. Okay. Cool. So moving along, and let me know, Mudit, if at any time the presentation like kind of glitches or you can't see my screen. We're all trying to figure out video conferencing and screen share these days. So anything can happen. Hopefully nothing will, and we'll see. Great.
Sounds great.
Yes. Awesome. So moving on, I want to talk a bit more about what HeadSpin is. HeadSpin's the connected intelligence platform. We provide developers and businesses with web, mobile, IoT, cloud, and 5G solutions to optimize user experiences via functional testing, performance management, and continuous monitoring on real SIM-enabled devices globally. And one of our unique selling points is actually that there is no SDK integration needed. We work with a lot of strategic developers and businesses and companies of all shapes and sizes around the world, and also with our channel partners. We were founded in 2015 by our CEO, Manish Lakwani, and our CTO, Brian Caldwell. We're headquartered in Palo Alto, California, but we're also a globally distributed team. We have over 200 employees worldwide. We're backed by Google Ventures, Dell, Iconic, Tiger Global, and many others. And when we talk about like companies, our companies who are also partners who are global have seen significant impact in terms of accelerated development, innovation, and business results throughout their release cycles, both in local as well as global markets. We recently reached unicorn status. We raised our Series C last month and we announced it. And we continue to innovate across video streaming, 5G labs, on-the-go testing, as well as peer benchmark comparisons, and more. And moving along to, if you think about it, this image kind of like points to what Mudit and I were talking about just before we started our webinar today, is around like how the world is shifting or how experiences are shifting. And it has happened pretty quickly and accelerated in the last few weeks alone. In some ways, we've kind of like turned upside down. And I feel like this image kind of represents a little bit of how, of course, there aren't too many cars and bikes on the road these days, but at least it represents in terms of like how most folks are feeling in terms of how they are experiencing connected experiences, as well as businesses are finding ground in this new world and new reality. And we know that connected experiences are fundamental to the success of every business. And this is actually amplified more because we're navigating through uncharted territories and waters with a global pandemic situation that seems to be unfolding and evolving every minute. And so on one hand, we almost everyone on this planet is connected. We have about 5 billion people around the world and who have a phone, and 4 billion of them have a smartphone. I remember my first phone, which was a hand-me-down Nokia. I don't know if anybody remembers what it looked like. It was a pencil box or a brick, whichever you want to call it, and it had a very expensive cell connection about 14 years back or so, and it charged roaming wherever you walked around. Went from one state to another in India alone. And now I think I barely think twice before I watch YouTube or Netflix on my data. And so a lot of things have changed over time. And also given the seismic shifts in the way we live, work, and frankly, even interact, we're all very familiar with this image. A lot of us are doing it right now as we speak. The first set of online experiences that have surged in consumption in the last few weeks have been the video conferencing apps like the Zoom that we're using right now, and of course, medical government sites and information sites, on-demand delivery apps, grocery apps, communication, and followed by everybody who is going through this experience right now, and especially trying to connect online, wherever these online experiences go. Unfortunately, this follows, and you have your spinner wheels that still exist, and companies are trying ways to overcome these, to provide uninterrupted experiences. This week alone, we read in the news how telcos and content providers like YouTube, Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, they're trying to kind of go SD streaming or even reduce the streaming quality. Telcos are asking companies to just ease the pressure on the network infrastructure, so that the more users can consume the content and have a flawless experience as they understand what is going on around them, and also continue to move as business as usual as much as possible. And why do you think, I mean, when we think about why are they doing this, it kind of goes into an age-old conversations that we have around with different companies as well as amongst ourselves here. Is connected experiences have a lot of still have a lot of impediments. There's a lot of barriers in terms of businesses and developers trying to provide high quality experience to customers, and especially right now when the ecosystem is going through a tremendous change, and it's across carriers, globally, operating systems, the CDN, the app versions that your app or your sites have, in terms of different versions that you release and test every week or so, and also in terms of network traffic and location where your user is based, and then real device conditions. And so when you think about whose responsibility is it to kind of ensure a good experience, you can't always blame the carriers. In fact, HeadSpin works with a lot of top telco providers around the world, and they're getting more sophisticated with monitoring solutions to measure the KPIs of the top apps and games and sites that are being consumed on their network. And they're comparing it to peers to be able to pinpoint issues that are not generated due to network quality or not related, but it could be something else that the developer or the business owner have more control over. Almost just to move in terms of what's kind of home to a lot of us right now, almost everyone on this webinar has thought about this dilemma at least once, if not multiple times during the last few weeks. Your users expect seamless experiences, and while you are working at home, how are you thinking about your products to work from anywhere, any device, any network condition? And how do you do this without any code change on your part, and be able to do this in an automated as well as scalable manner? And yes, you can is what I want to share here. It's HeadSpin has we have our always on accessible remote device cloud. It gives you the flexibility to run and run tests as well as performance sessions on any real device around the world. And our state-of-the-art data science platform, it provides root cause analysis of issues and continuous monitoring, and our platform enablement services support you via consulting and peer comparison analytics. And our HeadSpin infrastructure is spread over 160 locations around the world across about 100,000 plus unique carriers and broadband networks worldwide. And so if you think about it, if your devices that your users are on, that you are testing, that you're trying to figure out, how does it really operate in the wild, and it can be connected, then it can be tested on the HeadSpin platform. And these are just a few examples of those devices, and this list is always growing, be it the latest Android version that you want to check, your app web, your connected experiences on, whether it's the latest Pixel phone or it's the Samsung Galaxy that's coming out. Being able to have the flexibility as well as the reach to test on these devices and understand what your user's experience is going to be before you launch it out. And it's across the development cycle. It's not just something that you think after you launch, but it's at every stage of your iteration process. You want to be able to confidently release on any device, on any network condition, and be able to provide that sort of uninterrupted and seamless user experience. And if it so happens that there are issues that come out after, then we want to be able to provide you easier ways to kind of replicate and find that on the platform itself, on those devices. And then as a company, we also believe continuously improving our solutions and also obviously innovating along the way. And it could be on-premise solutions, or it could be, on the left-hand side, you actually see the on-premise solution that we have, which houses about 24 phones. We also took it a step further. We realized that users are not necessarily, unlike what we are experiencing right now, but in general, users are not mostly sitting in one place or consuming content in one place. Many of the services and products that companies are providing are consumed on the go. And so we actually took it a step further, and we launched a backpack which houses about 8 phones, as well as a car that drives around major cities, where we have these backpacks and this on-the-go mobile solution for testing and performance management. And then on the right-hand side, we continue to innovate with peer benchmarks. We heard from our strategic partners as well as prospective clients that they were very eager to understand, answer questions like, when I want to launch in a brand new market, I have no idea what other providers are providing in terms of experiences and how well they're doing. There's no litmus, or there's no benchmark to see how my app or my site is performing. And I also don't understand what devices and what kind of network conditions. And in order to, give them that level of analysis, as well as being able to share what it looks like on the ground for those devices and network conditions, we also launched peer comparison and benchmark reports, where you can compare with peers as well as KPIs that matter to you. And these are just some examples that we have also on our website if you're interested in checking out. And so when you move along, when you think about well, in my experience, when we work with businesses of all shapes and size, it's very, very clear that many of our companies have successfully prioritized testing, monitoring, and performance management. And it's not just in one country, but in all countries that they're present in. And they think about it more as efficiency around cost, as well as just resource allocation and management, to be able to kind of allocate resources in a way that no matter where their users are, they're still able to handle testing and performance management in a location that they would like their team members to be in. And they also didn't prioritize it after they got their million installs. So yes, these examples are of really large brands who have multi-million installs and engagement. But the point that I want to bring out here is that they didn't actually start after they got their million installs. They started at a very early stage and built it up over a period of time to learn and iterate, understand the performance over time, and continue to make adjustments. And I've listed a few examples here, and there are many others too. And performance really matters to these companies. It's not an afterthought. And how do I know that? It's because they're all successful partners of HeadSpin, and these are real case studies that we've actually worked with them and delivered. Now, I'll take a breather and I'll hand it off to Nathan, who will actually tell us a little more about why automation can create more efficiency for your teams to operate at scale. And also, he will be taking us through a demo. On to you, Nathan.
Oh, thank you so much, Gina. Excellent. Okay, so what I'll do is that I'll go ahead and take over the screen share here. And now that you understand what we do as a company, I wanted to now showcase to you how you can leverage HeadSpin as part of your testing and development process to ultimately measure and track performance, improve your app quality across different geographies, and much more. So really excited to jump into things. So first and foremost, on the screen share, I went ahead and I logged into one of my HeadSpin accounts. And as you can see, there's a wide variety of locations that you can choose from. In fact, we have a point presence in over 160 locations worldwide. So what this means for you is that you can actually test your application across Asia Pacific, Europe, Middle East, Africa, Latin America, and North America with ease. So that being said, let's just dive into it and let's go ahead and use some devices here. So first and foremost, I'll go ahead and jump into Chicago. And as you can see, I have two devices here that are both on carrier networks and as a result have associated phone numbers. And to jump on a device, it's as easy as pressing the start button. And this will load what we call a HeadSpin remote control session. And as the name suggests, this is a fast and fluid technology that we built that allows you to interactively manipulate and control a device from no matter where you're physically sitting in the world. So for example, I'm in Palo Alto, California at our headquarters. And as you can see, I'm flicking through the Springboard on iOS and I'll go ahead and launch the application that I'm interested in. And as you can see, it's rich and immersive. So essentially, any sort of application that you'd want to test, in this case, on an iOS device, you can actually upload and install your application. In this case, these are, once again, real character devices. So I could also conversely download the release build from the associated App Store or Google Play Store on Android. And the beauty of this is that I can actually test my application on a real device and through the web UI panel that we built, do advanced things such as take screenshots or even open up the device logs as well, such that you can easily and thoroughly troubleshoot. So all of these really helpful functionality is all built into the web UI. No need to switch between different windows, different tabs, or even your terminal. This is all built in. So that being said, there's always going to be critical user flows that lend themselves really well for manual inspection, especially when they're related to UI considerations, such as, for example, seeing if the constraints for the elements that you have in your layout are being respected across different device types, viewports, screen sizes, etc. So that being said, we have the ability for you to also put devices side by side in that endeavor. So I'll go ahead and click on my device tray, which is essentially all the devices that I've used before in the past. And this allows me to actually select upon a device. So for example, I'll go ahead and put an Android device, a Google Pixel 3 XL, side by side with the iOS device. And I'll go ahead and slide in the panel here. As you can see, I can actually use these devices simultaneously. So I'll go ahead and launch Duolingo here on Android. And the beauty of this is that, once again, I can actually test, in this case, in parallel across both devices. And as you can see here, even amongst these two builds, we can immediately see differences in terms of the list view options available for Android and iOS for both the latest builds of this particular app. So that being said, remote control is a rich and immersive experience that allows you to thoroughly test your apps. To take things a step further, we also allow developers the ability to run automation tests, and we support a wide variety of automation frameworks on the platform. That being said, in terms of the thousands of developers that Gina and I work with today, we've seen over the years a surge in popularity of APPIUM. And that being said, at HeadSpin, we're also contributors to the APPIUM open source project. And I'm going to talk about APPIUM right now, as well as some other helpful resources that we provide to upskill yourself on APPIUM, which I'll get to momentarily. But that being said, APPIUM is an open source framework that allows you to run automation tests across Android and iOS in a black box manner. So in other words, when I say black box, I mean that you don't actually have to have source code, which is really awesome, because then you can just launch an application under test and perform touch actions, events, etc. And it's super convenient and built into the HeadSpin cloud. So you'll always have a premier APPIUM experience when you're testing across HeadSpin, because the great thing about automation is that you can write a test and then run it across all the different devices that you have in HeadSpin. And we have a lot of just convenience capabilities, which is essentially just APPIUM terminology for advanced features that you can use as part of your test automation runs. So that being said, I think that it's best to demonstrate this. So here in the web UI, there's a built-in panel for grabbing the WebDriver URL and capabilities. And for folks on the virtual bridge that are new to APPIUM and sort of want to learn more, we can kind of treat this as a gentle introduction. So APPIUM is client-server architecture, and essentially the WebDriver URL, you can think of it as the glue that connects your APPIUM code that you have written and that you're running from your environment to being executed on the HeadSpin cloud. And the capabilities are just simply a means of selecting what device that you want. So for example, here I'm selecting this Google Pixel 3 XL. And we have corresponding REST APIs for retrieving this information. And to actually also dig a bit deeper, and this is a bit more of an advanced topic, we also have a feature in the HeadSpin platform that allows you to distribute your tests evenly across different devices in different geographies. Because essentially when it comes down to it, you may want to, for example, run a test that you have across devices that are on a carrier network in South Africa or in Malaysia. And at HeadSpin, we give you the flexibility of doing that. So that being said, we also have direct integration to community tools such as the HeadSpin APPIUM IDE. And what this tool allows you to do is to actually run an interactive test session where our inspector will help you identify attributes of the view hierarchy so you can ultimately scaffold the tests and also figure out the selectors needed to perform actions. So as you can see, I went ahead and I launched now Duolingo, but this time via automation. And once again, to return back to the APPIUM concepts, essentially what we're seeing here is that the APPIUM desktop inspector has sliced the view hierarchy of what the HeadSpin device screen is showing, such that any element in the view can be identified, and that also you can figure out what's the most efficient way to select on an element or send keyboard input to an element. And in terms of just sort of brief APPIUM overview here, the reason why this is very meaningful is because ultimately speaking, if you sort of philosophically think about when you're running an automation test, you spend a lot of your time figuring out what items to select upon, and then the corresponding touch actions that you want to send. And the takeaway here is that using APPIUM IDE, you have direct integration to testing on your devices in HeadSpin, such that you can, for example, generate and scaffold code. As you can see, this action is being performed live on the device I have in Mountain View, and the code is actually, for that interaction, being written for me as I speak, and I can even export this out and rerun as well. So you can record and replay. But also too, for folks that have existing APPIUM tests, you'll feel right at home because you can actually run your existing tests and also benefit from the unique capabilities that HeadSpin has added to make this like a pleasurable experience, such as, for example, the ability to distribute your tests evenly across different devices and different geos, a feature that we built called HeadSpin APPIUM Load Balancer, and quite frankly, much more. There's so much to talk about here, and for those functionalities, I like to sort of leave it for time at the end for Q&A if there are any further questions there. But that being said, I wanted to also talk about another core tenet of the platform, which is performance sessions. At HeadSpin, we take things a step further and we take things beyond pass and fail. So historically, one of the biggest challenges that both developers and testers have had alike is that ultimately speaking, you spend so much time to develop an app, launch an application, and when issues occur, like the onus is to figure out what's the root cause of the issue so you can find, fix, remediate, and ultimately improve the app experience and fix those issues. So ultimately speaking, it's a responsibility distributed between testing teams and of course the development teams. That being said, testing has sort of been colloquialized to sort of think of things in terms of binary pass or fail. And ultimately at HeadSpin, what we've done is that we've built a very awesome capability platform that we call performance sessions. And what's great is that I can trigger it with an existing APPIUM test by enabling the capability here. Or if I jump back into the web UI, I can just actually press this movie clip icon, which will actually start recording a session. What I want to do is that I want to actually walk you through essentially some real sessions that have been conducted for various projects with developers. And I wanted to share with you insights into the data and ultimately how you can leverage HeadSpin performance sessions to improve your application's performance. So to continue on with the example of Duolingo, here's a Duolingo test that was conducted in Mexico City on the Telcel network, which is a very popular carrier in Mexico. And I want to give you a quick lay of the land in terms of the HeadSpin Performance Sessions waterfall web UI. Once I introduce this, it'll help guide the discussion in terms of how you can leverage the powerful tool that we built to identify issues and ultimately fix them. So first and foremost, in terms of understanding the UI from left to right, on the left-hand side is the details panel. And essentially this tells me exactly where this test was conducted, which device as well, and all of the test artifacts that were collected, such as the video, the HTTP traffic, like a variety of flat file formats, which is very convenient, and even the raw PCAP. So these are the 802.11 frames. So you can take a look and go very deep into what was happening in terms of TCP and UDP traffic. And then in the middle panel here, this actually visualizes a lot of important critical aspects of the lifecycle activities that occurred during this test session. And as an analogy here, you can think of it as the instruments cluster in your car when you're driving, in the sense that the PyRing visualizations, they give me a heads up, and you can think of it as a sort of a tipping and queuing system to understand at a glance, specific behaviors that occurred. So we can see, for example, here that in terms of timings, we can see that the wait time, in other words, waiting for the first response back from the server, was pretty large. I mean, this is very disproportional to other lifecycle activities here, such as actually receiving the first byte, establishing that TCP connection, as well as establishing the TLS handshake. And we'll get to that more in a second. And session-wide too, we can see that a lot of the composition of traffic was audio, which is kind of makes sense. It's sort of like helps us understand our sort of logic here, because the thing is that Duolingo is a very audio-heavy, learning-based application. Furthermore, we can actually filter traffic on a given domain. So if I wanted to just see traffic specifically for anything that came from Duolingo.com, as well as, for example, other third-party SDKs or other sort of network calls are beaconed out by other libraries, which is very, very convenient. Furthermore, we can even get very deep into, for example, let's say I wanted to see traffic specifically for their Android API server. Well, I can actually do that just by, once again, clicking the dropdown and getting to the item that I want in order to filter the visualizations. So at a glance, we already have sort of a sense of what to expect. And then ultimately speaking, if I scroll down here, this is where we get to the heart of things, and why we call this our waterfall UI, because the video of the test session is correlated with each data point that's captured by the platform. And on the left-hand side, I'm greeted with our AI-based issue detection issue cards, which I'll also get to momentarily. And I know for the folks on the bridge, this is your first time seeing the data set that I'm showcasing here. This is automatically, of course, generated as part of HeadSpin performance session. And you're probably wondering, what's the best practice to sort of leverage tool and enumerate through this? So that's precisely what I'll walk through now. So essentially, this will be a gentle introduction to leveraging performance sessions to find and fix issues. So first and foremost, as my colleague Gina mentioned, user experience is key to how users are consuming your application. And we have a built-in classifier in HeadSpin that we call page content score, where essentially we're measuring the entropy of pixels on the screen for a given view in a keyframe that you're looking at. And what's great about this is that it automatically identifies poor user experience areas. So if I hover over these orange regions that the platform is presenting to me, so for example, this is like the launch screen after the app delegate method is fired, we can see that it's actually causing an impact time of a little bit over 9 seconds. And in subsequent fashion, I can see that there's a loading screen here. I can see that there's an asynchronous state where essentially the view hasn't rendered the content yet. And as I enumerate over these orange areas, the platform will pick up on this. And this brings me to best practice. So the best practice is to first start with the poor user experience areas, because those are key and help you prioritize where to start. From there, we can go ahead and I'll zoom in to make this a little bit easier to see on the virtual bridge. I can scroll further down, and this is where we get to the heart of things, because now we can actually see all of the network calls that occurred. Bear in mind, this was, for example, conducted on an Android device on the Telcel carrier network in Mexico City. And I can actually see, for example, earlier we saw that the platform was giving us a heads up that there were a lot of calls in the session that we were still waiting for the server to give back that first response. And in fact, this is what we're seeing here. So for example, I went ahead and I clicked on this blocking waiting call. And if you look on the right-hand side, I can actually take a look at the request headers. In other words, this is what the client application has constructed and sent out to the server, as well as the corresponding response headers as well. So I can see that, for example, this was actually an audio MPEG file that was served from an Amazon S3 bucket. And I can see all of the HTTP content parameters. And this is very key because ultimately speaking, a lot of the areas for performance in mobile application will come when you are able to address the client server communication considerations. So ultimately speaking, with HeadSpin performance sessions, you can go very deep into understanding what is happening over the network so you can find and fix these issues. So that being said, I also want to showcase here that, for example, this was a GET request for an audio file. So let's go ahead and play it back. So this was the audio file. This is the GET request that was actually blocking and causing this large wait time. And we can see that this was for an audio file for agua, which is a Spanish word for water. In addition to, of course, drilling down into different requests based on sort of triaging the user experience in a given point of time, we also have AI recommendation cards that automatically sift through the data points and group and categorize together and bubble up to the top here in the form of issues in categories. And this is super convenient because ultimately speaking, this helps us easily identify issues that are occurring. So the first thing that I want to draw our attention to here is this issue card called duplicate messages. Essentially, this is when the application has requested an identical resource. And from a mobile perspective, this should be an immediate red flag, just because ultimately speaking, there's no need to, of course, download the same thing more than once. And this goes for two considerations. So on the client side, when you fetch a resource, having like a sufficient local caching strategy such that that resource can be pulled from local cache or even local DB storage if needed, opposed to having to make the expense of creating a new TCP connection, fetching the resource, and either saving the resource in memory or persisting it to disk. And this is what we're precisely seeing here. So we're seeing all of the network calls that were duplicate resources. And what's great is that the platform easily color codes this and identifies this for me. So for example, if I click on the square, which is the first time it happens, I can see that, for example, it was a GET request for this audio file. And for example, if I hover over here, I can see an exact duplicate call. And as we can see here from taking a look at the inspector on my right-hand side, this is the same exact resource that was essentially downloaded and requested more than once. And if we were to look at things here in our tabular view, and we were able to actually add up the impact time, this would be the sum of this would be actually the time that you would save actually if you were to address these issues, which is very, very huge and critical. In addition to this, there's other key considerations that are very important for improving performance, such as, for example, parts of the application where it would make sense for you to reuse the same TCP connection opposed to spawning a new one. Any sort of calls from the server that were actually slow, as well as slow downloads, HTTP errors, and much more. So the summary here is that HeadSpin performance sessions makes it very easy for you to actually identify issues that occur. And quite frankly, this is very addicting in the sense that build after build, running your automation tests, you get this data, and ultimately speaking, the goal from there is to fix the issues. And every time you fix an issue, it'll reduce, of course, the issue cards that are being presented and flagged to you. To take things a step further, we also have the ability for you to actually look at this in aggregate. So far I've been focusing on one performance session, but this brings us to the question of how do we understand this data at a larger scale? Because for example, you may be running 100 performance sessions on HeadSpin or 1,000, so on and so forth. So we actually have developed really rich and robust tooling to allow you to do so. So I'll go ahead and switch to a different tab I have here, where for here I've loaded the HeadSpin performance monitoring capability. And essentially what this allows you to do is that it allows you to actually group together your performance session tests into a common category. So we call this a user flow. So for example, here, there's a user flow for Duolingo. And as you can see, for the tests are conducted, I can actually now look at this data across the different devices and even different countries across all of the measurements that the HeadSpin performance engine has captured as part of my sessions, which is very convenient. So this gives you at a glance a macro level view into what your application's performance is across various metrics that we've captured, and even custom metrics that you can add as part of your test session as well. On top of this, we also have a very handy, convenient platform capability that we call HeadSpin Replica. And what this allows you to do is that it actually allows you to query all the data that's collected within your user flows in SQL format, such that you can start to answer higher level questions, such as, for example, what was the average frame rate across all the 1,000 sessions that I ran? Or, for example, what were the number of slow downloads that occurred on Monday, or any sort of arbitrary time in the past? So the beauty of this is, and just to recap here, is that you can run tests on the platform, whether they're manual, whether they're automated. And as part of that process, the HeadSpin Performance Session engine can collect data and give you intelligence in terms of how your application was performing as part of that test. And then you can also analyze this information in aggregate, but also connect it to other tools, such as, for example, business visualization and intelligence tools. Because now that you have this data in SQL format, the sky's the limit in terms of the analysis that you can perform. So that being said, I wanted to recap essentially just some of the also core considerations to keep in mind to improve your application over the network, in addition to the examples that I've shared. So essentially, when leveraging HeadSpin Performance Sessions to analyze your app, our platform can help you improve essentially areas that have slow downloads or duplicate messages by identifying them. And in particularly for assets that are downloaded over the network, such as images, consider having a server-side ability to configure the height and URL parameters. That's very much key, because ultimately speaking, there's going to be a diversity of devices that you may be testing on with different screen sizes. So being able to take the burden of the client side to have to resize an image, that's something that if the client itself, when it makes a request for an image, if it can sort of pass in the height and width that it needs to, at least the resizing is done on the server side before the client actually messages it. Also, another consideration with images: don't download images that are larger than device resolution. So a lot of these slow downloads, in fact, in this case, could have been actually like prevented in that case. And also for other image considerations, perform lossless image compression on the PNG or JPEG images. But also there's a really excellent image format that's been around for a couple of years now, but it's still relatively new in terms of adoption. Google has really helped spur the adoption here, is an image format called WebP. So that's also another consideration. And then if your application has video content downloads, consider making them resumable by adding and implementing the content range header, which will prevent against duplicate copies being downloaded. And that's an attribute that you can actually verify, especially when you make the changes on your backend, or if you're using a CDN through the HeadSpin Performance Session tool. And then that being said, there's a lot of just network optimization strategies that one can do and can validate, quite frankly, from running performance sessions. Just to kind of give a lowdown of some of the common ones. So believe it or not, like the goal too, especially when you're making a network aware app, is to actually aim to make fewer HTTP requests, essentially figuring out ways to do more with less. So this goes hand in hand with the platform identifying slow TLS connections or connection reuse, such that you can, for example, use an existing TCP connection instead of reusing. And then also reducing the number of DNS lookups, because that would add to round trip time, and avoiding any sort of redirects that may occur. So that being said, like now that we've given sort of an overview of the platform capabilities, I wanted to also give sort of context to how you can learn more about Appium. So at HeadSpin, Jonathan Lips, who's actually the core maintainer of the Appium open source project, actually leads like a premier like Appium instruction and training at HeadSpin. And that being said, Appium is a very like powerful framework with a lot of capabilities. And for folks that are either new, they may be wondering, where do I start off to learn about Appium so I can write automation tests? And for intermediate or advanced users, you may be curious to know more about the new features in Appium, such as, for example, being able to send commands in batch, different advanced selector strategies, such as identifying an element by image. and much more. So that being said, if you're interested to learn more, please let us know, and we're happy to help facilitate Appium training with Jonathan Lips. On top of that too, one thing that I want to note as well is that we also have extended the trial time at HeadSpin. So if you're really keen to understand more, you can easily start your 7-day trial at HeadSpin by going to headspin.io. That being said, that concludes my portion of the presentation. At this point, I wanted to open it up to the Lambda Test team, and also thank everyone on the virtual bridge for attending.
Thanks, Nathan, for the completely comprehensive demo of the HeadSpin platform. So it's really impressive what you guys have built. The attention to detail is something that is rarely seen in a testing-based product, and we're really glad that you guys are giving at least your guys are giving a 7-day trial to test it out. I also wanted to give a brief demo about Lamites platform as well. So what Nathan just covered is related to mobile app testing. But if you guys have a digital presence, you would also have web-based presence as well. So you can test your mobile applications at HeadSpin, and you can test your web applications, your web-based presence at Lamites platform. So we have end-to-end mobile browsers as well. So we are not the real devices like HeadSpin is providing you, but we are providing you emulators and simulators that are running the real browsers. So if you want to, for example, test your website on, let's say, Samsung Galaxy Note, so you just can come to our Lamites platform, go to the real-time testing, click on a mobile, select the mobile device you want, and click on Start. What it will do is it will provide you instant access to a mobile browser that is running on a real operating system but emulated hardware. So you can perform end-to-end testing of your web-based applications at Lambda Test. Right, so this is the real-time testing feature is more of a manual testing part. That means you can perform your manual test. You can fill the forms as it's there. We also have a very cool dev tools that are integrated here. So if you want to debug your applications, that would be sometimes not even possible in your handheld device. This is a very handy tool that can help you debug your web applications from here, right? Similarly, we also have a feature that can help you. So, for example, during the testing, you find any issue, you can use our inbuilt mark as a bug feature that can help you push your screenshots and issues directly to your project management tool. So, for example, if you have integration with any project management tool like Jira or Asana or Slack, you can send it directly from here. Right, so we have more cool features, like you can take a screenshot, you can record a complete video of the platform of your testing session. So for example, if it requires multiple steps to reproduce any bug, you can use the video functionality. You can also obviously rotate the orientation of your device and everything, right? So apart from that, these are all the real-time features. These are all the manual testing features that we have. We also have features around automation testing. So Nathan just briefly covered Appium. So there's a counterpart to Appium as well, Selenium. So you can use Selenium to test your web pages, mobile web pages, and you can connect with Lambda Test Grid. So Lambda Test has a collection of of more than 2,000 plus browser versions, operating systems that you can use to test your web applications and website on different type of browsers. So you get complete browser coverage for all your test sessions, right? And not just that, you can run your test in parallel. That means you can run your test multiple test threads at the same time. So not only can you increase your browser coverage, you can also cut down your overall test execution time by running your tests in parallel, right? So let me give you an example. So for example, I have a very small Selenium script here that is going to, I've written it in TestNG. So what it's going to do, it's going to load up a URL, very small GitHub based URL of a to-do list. It will find few boxes, click on few boxes. So it's a very small script, right? So the major difference here is, so if you are running Selenium scripts right now, yeah, and you are running Selenium scripts locally, you would be calling a local WebDriver. So when you are using Lambda test, instead of calling a local WebDriver, you would have to call a remote WebDriver like this, and you have to define a grid where you want to run your test on. That grid is defined here. This is the grid URL, and you have to define an authentication key to access that grid URL. So you, all of this information you can find here in the Lambda test automation dashboard. In this key icon, just click here and you will find your username, access key, and the hub URL, everything, right? Apart from that, the other major change that you would have to do is that you would have to define a desired capability object. So everything at our Lambda test platform, as I said, we have a collection of 2000 plus browsers and devices. So to understand, so to tell Lambda test like which exactly which browser you want to run your test on, you have to define a simple object to tell like this is the browser, this is the operating system I want to run my test on. And at our dashboard, you can see that all the tests are organized based on build name and a test name. And this can be again defined through the desired capability set. So if you see that this is, there are multiple different capabilities as well. So sometimes it may be overwhelming to define like find out write that piece of code. So we have a very nifty tool here called capability generator that will help you create your desired capabilities very quickly. So for example, I'm using Java. I want to test on, let's say, 1+6. So with a different Android version, I want to test, for example, let's say iPhone. I can use this tool to quickly define my desired capability object here. I can just copy it and paste it back in my object, and I'm good to go, right? So not much change you would have to do in your Selenium script, just three major changes. Instead of local WebDriver, calling remote WebDriver, uh, define which the URL of the grid where you want to run your test on, authentication, and the desired capability object. That's it. And the same script will run perfectly at Lambda test platform itself. So let me run it and give you an example how it will show, right? So this is how this is the test is being running right now. One, you can also see the live streaming of that running test. So it's a little bit slow. My net is right now because of multiple streaming that I'm doing here. So I have a very a little bit a past test that I just ran a few minutes ago, right? So you can see the live running of your test there. And once all the test has been executed, you can see end-to-end logs of that test. For example, you can see the command logs. So after execution, every Selenium command or platform automatically captures that Selenium command, gives you what the response, and our platform automatically takes a screenshot of the viewport. So you won't have to even define it in your code. You just have to at Lambda test platform, our platform automatically takes the screenshot of the viewport after execution of every command. So during the test session, like if there was any error during any command, or if there was any issue that you see in the screenshot, this is a very nifty way to figure it out, to find it out. Similarly, we also provide you end-to-end network logs. So complete network logs of your running tests you would be able to see here. You can also filter it by JavaScript, image, and the media types, right? You also get raw logs as well. So if you are using, for example, any custom reporting tool and you need APPIUM logs, so you can use these. You will also get console logs, the browser console logs. So I have right now turned off my console logs, but if I have turned on, you will be able to see something here. Similarly, you get all the metadata related to tests, like what was the test name, build name, which operating system that test was running on, and everything. And similarly, you can download. So if there wasn't any exception during that running of the test, you would be also able to see it here, right? You will also have complete exception logs. And in addition to that, we have end-to-end APIs as well. So if you have want to extract all of this data, you can use our Lambda test APIs to extract all this data. Um, you can even delete this data if you want. You can use all this data for any custom reporting tool that you want, right? So we have integrations with nearly every major project management tool that you can use to pass bug directly from Lana test platform to your project management tool. And in addition, if you are using any CI/CD platform, we also have complete integration with the all near major CI/CD platform as well. We also have a Jenkins plugin if you're using Jenkins. We also have a Circle CI plugin for running any tests you have for on Circle CI, right? So we have integration with every CI/CD pipeline. So we integrate end to end with your complete testing ecosystem with project management tool, with CI/CD pipeline, and you can manage your complete testing using complete web testing using Lambda test here. Right. So I think this is the major things that I wanted to cover related to Lambda test. Uh, I would be, if there's nothing else, I would be happy to take any questions that you guys may have. We have, I think we don't have any questions as of now. So if you guys have any questions for us, for Gina, for HeadSpin guys here, do feel free to uh, ask any questions in the QA section, and let us know if we can help you out with your questions. No. So I think we don't have any questions. That's very good.
I think we got one.
We got one. So I have one question related from Tot Attila. How can I set up a project which is in a test environment? So at Lambda test, if you want to run your test, run your
Hello. Yeah. I see we see one question. How can I set up a test project which is in test environment? Nathan, do you want to take that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's actually multiple ways to do this in HeadSpin, which is really awesome because it's quite frankly flexible. So in this case, in your test environment, there's two easy ways to do this. So one is that you can install your VPN profile on the device such that it can communicate to your test environment backend, or you could, for example, we provide, of course, like the public IPs. So you could actually, like, your network team could whitelist those IPs. In summary, even though the device is hosted, you could still, for example, like run tests on it on your local environment, just like what you would do if you were in your office.
All right. Similarly, if you want to test a locally hosted application or locally hosted project at Lambda Test, we have a feature called Lambda Tunnel. What it will do, it will allow you to connect Lambda Test platform with your locally hosted, your local system, and you can run you can test your locally hosted applications at Lambda Test platform as well. So we have just recently launched a very smooth app called Underpass. For you can use this application to kind of with a single click kind of connect Lambda test tunnel with Lambda test application with Lambda test servers, and you can use this to test your locally hosted or even privately hosted applications at our platform. So once the tunnel is active, right, you can define which tunnel you want to use. And if, for example, let me just in fact start a locally hosted page as well. Oh, I've already started uh, localhost. You can test your locally hosted application at Lambda test. So in fact, any privately hosted application as well, if it is on a dev server that is not accessible over the over internet, but accessible. Oh, I think I edited the URL a bit wrong. My bad. Yeah, there we go. So if there's any application that is not available over the internet, however, it is accessible at your local system, at the system that you are testing, or even in a CI/CD pipeline in a dev environment, you can use our Lambda tunnel app to test here. Similarly, we also have an npm package that you can use to test your locally hosted applications via CI/CD pipeline as well. Right. Another question we have is related to iPhone. Gina, I think if you can take
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, we're right here. So Nate, go ahead. And it's related to also another question below about iPhone, so we can probably take both of those at the same time. Yeah.
All
Oh,
right.
excellent. Yeah, like I mean, these are really great questions. I mean, thank you so much for everyone for being so engaged in this discussion. So, um, what I'd like to do actually is that if I can take over the screen share temporarily, I'd
Give
love
me a second.
to
Yeah.
just oh, no, no problem at all. I'd love to just jump back into screen share and answer the questions coming in live. So, so
Yes.
that being
So
said, so the first question was that how am I able to control the iPhone in the earlier part of the demo? So I went ahead and jumped back onto that same iPhone, and essentially this is a technology that we built at HeadSpin for remote control. So essentially, what it allows us to do is that it essentially allows us to not only show the device, but actually send like touch events to the device. So essentially translate sort of within your browser. In this case, I swipe to the left or I swipe to the right, or if I tap on something to that to the physical device. And this sort of goes hand in hand with essentially our very like unique setup, where essentially we built our own custom hardware where it's plug and play. We can just procure a device from the local market, plug it into our infrastructure, and then this core technology for remote control is then accessible. And what I can do as well is that if that interests you, you want to learn more, feel free to shoot an email to Gina and myself, so Gina at HeadSpin.io and Nathan at HeadSpin.io. Happy to sort of jump into more technical details there. There's also a great question on essentially, okay, like iOS device which controls the device. This I think helps answer that in the sense that you can control both Android and iOS devices in the platform. And then there's a question from Ansari. This is a great question, Ansari. You're absolutely correct in the sense that for this discussion, I focused on more client-server communication, just because that's where, especially for apps like Duolingo or just like apps in general, a lot of sort of performance can be improved by like fixing how your application handles itself on the network. But you have a very sort of fair point in terms of, do we have other tools that for analyzing client-side performance? So the answer to the question, absolutely yes. So we have another capability platform that we call Nimble app. I didn't get the time today to actually step through it, but essentially, if you reach out to me, I'm more than happy to sort of give you a dedicated time to walk through it. Essentially, in that capability, what we do is that we analyze essentially all of the method calls that are being made. And for example, methods that are blocking your main thread, in other words, blocking the thread where the UI is running, those get flagged, as well as CPU, like methods that take a lot of CPU time to execute, and much more. There's also a question from Waleed about this session. So the good news is that this is actually recorded. So as we're speaking, it's actually being live streamed to YouTube. So there'll be a YouTube link.
So once this is done, we will also be hosting it over the YouTube, and all the guys who have, all the people who have signed up for the webinar, we will be shooting you that link over the email as well. Right. There's another question related to uh, local testing. Right. So we do have capabilities around location-based testing. So we have an inbuilt proxy that you can use to kind of test your web applications or website for different geolocations. Uh, we do not have as many countries that HeadSpin has. HeadSpin has a much bigger infrastructure, much bigger range of countries for their platform, but we do have all the major countries that there are, like United States, a few countries in Europe, and a few countries in South America. And we are constantly expanding that list as we find more and more partners that can help us out in the proxy department and in the like kind of provide us with the infrastructure to kind of run the test there. Nathan, again, we have a question related to number of devices here, related to batteries, I think. Can you help us out?
Yes, absolutely. Like this is a really great question, and what I like to do actually is that I like to actually jump back into screen share and let me give you sort of a sneak peek of our infrastructure because that'll help lend itself to answering the question. So
Mhm.
I'll go ahead and jump back into screen share here. And what we're looking at here is essentially, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, but now, at least now there's a pictorial way for me to show this to everyone, is essentially what our device cloud infrastructure looks like. So essentially, for this, for even getting to the point of how we scale to 160 locations, fundamentally speaking, you need to have rock solid, stable infrastructure because if devices go offline or if they get bloated, that will certainly block and impede the ability for anyone to run like an automation test or just collect performance data, et cetera. So to answer the question, so essentially we have a custom USB hub. So if you look on the right hand side, essentially that sort of white panel that has the HeadSpin logo, that's actually our custom USB hub. And essentially with that, we can actually regulate the charging that's actually being sent to the device. So, and also in turn allows us to actually collect the battery drain and other energy metrics as well. And effectively, this is really our secret sauce in the sense that when a test is running, we can we can regulate, and also when the device is idle, we can also regulate and have logic around that. As a result, that's why we don't experience the traditional bloating that occurs to the question's point of if you have a device that's physically plugged in all the time, of course, over time that'll bloat the battery. But because of in short our technology around the custom USB hub and the ASIC that we developed around it, it allows it to control the regulation. So the lifespan of the device is the same as you would for like for example, a personal physical device that you have.
All right. So let's see what more questions we have.
I think these are really great questions. Like Nathan mentioned, we have our emails in the participant, in the chat box. So if there are more questions, please reach out to us. And also, as we mentioned before, we do have a 7-day trial going on. Five days are left. So if you're interested in testing out the platform, please step in and check out. These devices are available for you to get in and actually start testing now.
Awesome. So Gina, can you also give us a little bit of kind of like what kind of devices HeadSpin supports?
This was actually, I can screen share quickly. This was actually, so if you're able to see my screen clear, yes. So it's basically these and more. So I mean, we haven't listed out each and every model, but you can imagine like basically almost every device that is connected right now in terms of phones, tablets, wearables, setup of OTT boxes. You can for streaming, for live streaming. So media and entertainment, as well as many other streaming partners use use the platform to test and measure performance and even monitor over time. And also when it comes to like the HDMI capture, whether it's your Xbox, your PlayStations, the Google Stadia, console gaming, if you wanted to test those, as well as newer ones that are coming out with automotive OS, and then browsers as well, and home internet gateways and screenless devices like the assistants. And this is always growing. We're always tinkering with the devices that come in, because if users are on them, then we obviously care about like those users having a really good experience. And the companies that support and provide these services to users, they always want to test these devices, and they may not always have them readily available in their offices or in centers, and it's easier for them to just step into the platform and actually take one of these devices and see how the experience really looks like on the ground.
So I also saw on their website that you guys are forefront in 5G based devices as well, right? You are pioneering in testing of 5G devices as well.
Yes, we are actually. We do have, and I can share that later with you on some of the content that we've had around 5G. In terms of 5G testing, we have a few providers that we are already working with in testing. It is, it's already here. We hear a lot of. You may have already heard from different providers how they're making headway in this space, and it's something that is very passionate and close to our heart in terms of making sure that we're not playing catch up, but we're actually leading the charge in terms of
Mhm.
5G capabilities and supporting use cases. Because the way how users are going to consume on 5G is going to be very different. And companies are looking to like kind of how do they actually provide these experiences when it's more prevalent and when it's more easily available. So yes.
Awesome. So I think we kind of answered nearly all the questions. Uh, Let me know, people who are attending, if you have any few more questions for us. We'd be happy to help. Uh,
It's great to see
uh,
that people actually stayed longer after the hour
yes, so we
allocated.
are
So thank you
we
so
are
much.
already 10 minutes overshot the allocated hour. So I think this would be a good time to kind of wrap it up. I also wanted to highlight another part here that is related to our chat support. So if you have any questions for us or for Headspin guys, feel free to reach out. Nathan and has just shared their email ID as well over the chat. You can use that, or you can come to our chat support. So we have an in-app chat support. We are very fast over it. We have our turn response time in minutes. Anytime you want to ask about anything or do you have any question, just feel free to come here and start chatting with us, right? Even I'm on the chat support. So anytime you face any issue, just come here and we would be happy to help you out. Right. So I think that's it. That's it from our side. Really, thank you all for joining us for this webinar, even in this crazy COVID-19 based situations. So I would be signing off now. So guys, stay safe, work from home or stay locked down as we are right now. But we can get through this eventually, and hope everything comes back to normal. Right. Really thanks, Gina and Nathan, for joining us over the webinar and guiding us through the Headspin platform. Really appreciated you guys taking the time out as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lambda Test, and thank you so much, Mudit, for hosting us and coordinating this. We're very excited.
Awesome. So I think that's it. Stay safe. Have a great day ahead, guys.
Bye, everyone.
All right, thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. And thank you, Madhu, for hosting.